I used to believe birthdays marked progress, proof that you'd made it another year, that the people around you saw your worth enough to celebrate it. At 25, I thought maybe things would be different, that maybe my family would finally look at me without that constant flicker of disappointment in their eyes. The living room was decorated just enough to pass as festive, but not enough to hide the hollowness underneath. A banner that read "Happy Birthday" sagged in the middle like it was tired of pretending. Balloons slouched in the corners, their shine already dulled. The cake sat on the table, its frosting neon pink and store-bought, the kind that leaves a chemical aftertaste. But I still held on to hope. Because even when you've been hurt before, some part of you still aches to be seen. Guests shuffled around with paper cups in hand, chatting in low voices. The air smelled faintly of pizza grease and cheap vanilla candles. My sister Emily leaned against the counter, phone in hand, scrolling as if she were too busy to notice me. Ryan, my younger brother, filmed everything, grinning like he was capturing material for his next joke at my expense. And then, Dad stepped forward. He carried a small white envelope in his hand, holding it like it was precious, like it contained something that mattered. My heart kicked hard in my chest. For a moment the room blurred and all I could see was that envelope. Maybe it was a card. Maybe it was money. Not a fortune, but a little help, a sign that he believed in me. Maybe it was just words, but words that said, "I see you. I'm proud of you." He stopped in front of me and smiled. Not the warm kind, the kind parents give when they're proud. No, this was the smile he wore when he was about to make an example out of someone. "Go on," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Open it." The envelope felt crisp under my fingers, sealed with too much care for something so small. I slid my nail under the flap and peeled it open. My pulse raced. The room seemed to lean in. Inside was nothing. No card, no words, no folded bill. Just a blank piece of paper. A silence stretched thin for a second, and then it snapped. Laughter burst out around me. Emily actually clapped her hands. Ryan's phone was aimed right at my face, recording every second. Even a couple of cousins chuckled into their drinks. I froze, staring at the emptiness in my hand, my throat dry. Dad's voice sliced through the noise. "You know what this means? This means that until you fill your own life, nobody else will do it for you." The room roared again, the laughter swelling like applause at a cruel performance. And there I stood, my 25th birthday reduced to an empty envelope and a lesson I never asked for. The laughter didn't die quickly. It lingered, rippling through the room like a cruel echo that refused to fade. My cheeks burned hot, my hands trembling as I held that hollow envelope as if it weighed more than bricks. Emily leaned closer, smirking like she'd been waiting for this moment. Her perfume was sharp, almost acidic, filling my nose as she whispered just loud enough for others to hear. "Guess Dad gave you what you already had. Nothing." A chorus of snickers followed. Even the cousins, who normally stayed neutral, looked away with grins pressed against their cups. Ryan, still filming, zoomed in on my face. I could see the glow of his screen reflecting in his eyes. My humiliation was no longer just in the room. It was being captured, stored, possibly shared. I forced a laugh. Not a real one, but the brittle kind you cough out when you're cornered. My throat felt dry, my smile shaky, but I thought maybe if I laughed with them it wouldn't sting as much. Instead, it only deepened the wound. Dad raised his glass, his voice booming over the chatter. "To lessons learned," he declared, as though he'd given me a priceless gift instead of stripping me bare in front of everyone. Glasses clinked. Drinks were raised. It was a toast to my emptiness. I wanted to vanish, to sink into the sagging balloons or slip into the cracks of the floorboards. My eyes darted to the cake on the table, the candles waiting to be lit. They looked ridiculous now, colorful, cheerful, mocking. Who could blow out candles after this? Who could make a wish in a room that already decided you weren't worth one? Mom stood in the corner, her hands wrapped around a paper plate she hadn't touched. She didn't laugh, but she didn't stop them either. Her gaze flicked toward me, soft but fleeting, like a shadow of sympathy that vanished as soon as Dad glanced her way. Ryan finally lowered his phone, but only after muttering, "This one's going online for sure." My stomach dropped. The thought of strangers seeing my face at the exact moment humiliation crushed me made me feel sick. Dad stepped closer, his hand on my shoulder. His grip wasn't tender, it was firm, controlling. He looked around at the crowd and said, "Remember this moment. Because this is what happens when you live without purpose. The room chuckled again. My humiliation was now a shared joke, a story they'd all carry home to retell in smirking voices. Inside, I felt myself fracture. I was 25, standing in a room full of people who should have celebrated me, yet I was being paraded as a cautionary tale. My stomach churned, my eyes stung, but I refused to let tears fall. If they wanted a show, they wouldn't get that satisfaction. I pressed the envelope against my chest, its emptiness burning through me. And in that hollow, a seed of rage began to root itself. This wasn't just humiliation. This was a declaration of war, one I hadn't chosen, but one I would learn to fight. The morning after my birthday, the house felt colder than usual. Maybe it was the silence, maybe it was me, hollow from the night before. I was halfway through reheating leftover pizza when Dad walked in, coffee mug in hand, like nothing had happened. "Starting next month," he said casually, "you'll be paying rent." $1,000, I blinked, the slice of cold pizza still in my hand. 1,000? He didn't look at me when he answered. "If you're old enough to celebrate turning 25, you're old enough to contribute. Think of it as motivation." Then he walked out, leaving his mug ring on the counter like a signature. I stood there stunned. I barely had enough for groceries, let alone 4 figures every month. But there was no room for debate. In this house, Dad's words weren't suggestions. They were sentences, and this one was meant to choke me. That night, I opened my laptop. Its hinge creaked, and the screen's glow filled my room. I typed online freelance jobs into the search bar, my fingers trembling. Dozens of listings appeared. Data entry, transcription, copywriting, graphic design. Most paid little, but little was still more than nothing. The first week was brutal. I stayed up past 2 a.m., entering receipts into spreadsheets for a client in another country, earning pennies per hour. My eyes burned, my wrists ached. But when that first $30 landed in my account, I felt something stir. Not pride exactly, but proof that I wasn't as powerless as Dad wanted me to believe. Days blurred. I skipped lunches at work, pocketing the money I would have spent. Dinner was usually rice, sometimes just toast. Every dollar mattered. My friends invited me out for drinks, but I always found an excuse. How could I explain that I was trying to survive my own father's challenge? At home, Emily teased me for always being on my laptop. "What are you even doing? Playing games?" she snorted. I just smiled tightly, never telling her that those late nights were keeping me afloat. Ryan mocked the dark circles under my eyes, joking that I looked like a zombie. I let him laugh. They didn't need to know. What they saw as weakness was really the slow, quiet sharpening of my resolve. I tracked every dollar in a notebook I kept under my bed. Rent due, $1,000. Savings so far, $162. It looked pitiful, but it was mine. Each time I logged in and saw a payment notification, my chest tightened with something new. Possibility. The same house that tried to suffocate me had no idea I was building a secret life right under its roof. And though the humiliation still burned, it was beginning to transform. Every skipped meal, every sleepless night, every line of text I typed into a stranger's spreadsheet. They weren't just survival. They were bricks. Quiet hidden bricks I was stacking to build my way out. Dad thought the envelope was empty. He didn't know I had already started filling it. One late evening, Dad asked me to drop some documents off in his office before I went upstairs. Normally, I avoided that room. The heavy oak desk, the faint smell of stale coffee and cigar smoke, the bookshelves crammed with old trophies and binders he hadn't opened in years. It felt like his kingdom, a place where his voice lingered even in silence. I set the manila envelope down, but as I did, I noticed a folder left open on the desk. A stack of papers spilled slightly from the edge. At first I meant to ignore it, but then I saw the word "Final Notice" stamped in red across the top page. My heart lurched. I told myself to look away. Instead, I pulled the folder closer. The first page was a credit card bill. Overdue. Balance. $14,378. Interest piling up like rot. Behind it, another. 8,000s maxed out. Then another. And another. Each one heavier than the last. I flipped faster, my breath shallow. Bank statements showing overdrafts. Collection notices. Letters from creditors demanding payment. Even a line of desperate notes scribbled in Dad's handwriting. Call tomorrow. Ask for extension. The same man who held up an empty envelope at my birthday party, who told me my life was worthless until I filled it, was drowning in debt. I sank into his leather chair, the papers trembling in my hands. It didn't make sense at first. Dad was always the one boasting about financial discipline, about earning your keep. He preached control and responsibility as though they were his inventions. And yet here it was. Proof of the cracks he tried so hard to plaster over. Images flashed in my mind. Emily flaunting her shopping bags. Ryan bragging about his latest gadget. Dad toasting to lessons learned. All of it. The parties. The clothes, the fake stability, and it was all borrowed. Paid for with money that didn't exist. The humiliation I carried from my birthday night shifted in that moment. The weight of it didn't crush me anymore. It fueled me. For weeks I had been scraping by, denying myself small joys, eating rice and toast, working until my eyes burned. And for what? To hand over $1,000 to a man who couldn't keep his own life together? I pressed the folder shut, but not before sliding one page free. A bill with the largest number on it. Proof. Insurance. A reminder that the balance of power wasn't fixed. It was shifting. That night, back in my room, I spread the paper on my desk beside my savings notebook. Two worlds colliding. His lies, my effort. His emptiness, my quiet growth. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. For the first time, I didn't just feel anger. I felt clarity. Dad wasn't invincible. His empire was paper thin, and I had just found the tear in it. And I knew then the empty envelope wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of his unraveling. Revenge didn't come in a single explosion. It came in quiet choices, sharp as glass, hidden in plain sight. I learned quickly that patience was more powerful than anger. If I lashed out, they'd just call me emotional, immature, ungrateful. But silence? Silence let me sharpen my blade where they couldn't see. Emily came first. She was always flaunting some new trip, some new outfit, all charged on the family card Dad liked to parade around as a symbol of his generosity. But I knew the truth now. That card was already suffocating under debt. A week before her big vacation, she stormed into my room, her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. "Grace, fix this," she demanded, shoving her phone at me. The payment for her flight had failed. I scanned the error message, biting back a grin. Declined, funds insufficient. She didn't know I had already seen the statements, already knew Dad had maxed out every line he had. "Sorry, Em," I said, handing the phone back. "If the money's not there, I can't make it appear. Maybe ask Dad." Her face went pale. She stomped away, and minutes later the shouting began. Emily shrieking about her trip. Dad snapping back about ungrateful children. The whole house shaking with their fight. I sat at my desk, calm as a storm in the eye of itself. One down, Ryan was next. He liked to pretend he was the responsible one, bragging about his promotions, his shiny car, his future. But when his confidence cracked, it always leaked into my lap. "Grace," he said one night, sliding a USB across the counter. "Fix up my resume, polish it. Upload it to the job portal. I need it by tomorrow." His voice was flat, entitled, as though I were his secretary. I opened the file later, scrolling through typos, half-finished bullet points, a disaster disguised as ambition. For a moment I almost fixed it. Old habits die hard. Then I stopped. I hovered over the upload button, my finger trembling, and then I clicked. I submitted it exactly as it was. 3 days later, Ryan stomped into the kitchen, slamming his laptop shut. "They didn't even call me back," he raged. "That company's a joke." Emily laughed. Dad muttered something about resilience. I just sipped my coffee, savoring the taste of quiet rebellion. 2 down. But Dad required precision. He was the architect of my humiliation, the man who held up that empty envelope like it was scripture. And yet he leaned on me more than anyone. Tax season arrived, and like clockwork, he shoved a pile of documents into my hands. "Sort this out. File it online. You know I don't have the patience for this crap." I nodded, retreating to my room. But instead of just filing them, I combed through every page, every overdue balance, every overdraft fee. I scanned them, saved them, labeled them neatly into folders. Proof I didn't expose him. Not yet. Instead, I tucked them away, waiting. Because revenge isn't about the first strike, it's about the last one.